Library computer, data being received. Working.
Fascinating. You're in the hands of an adolescent.
Hey, welcome to my first reading report of April 2026. And let's just jump right into it, shall we? Borak and Other Desert Adventures by Robert E. Howard. This is one of the Del Rey volumes that reprint various Robert E. Howard stories. They've been out, gee whiz, 15, 20 years now. They've been out a while. But there's still amongst the best source of Howard stories. The man was a magnificent storyteller. Also, the Robert E. Howard Foundation is putting out great books right now. I reviewed the Pirate Adventures volume in my last video. And Howard is just a great writer. He wrote great stories. Sometimes he wrote merely good stories, but they were still better than almost what anyone else was doing in the pulp fiction magazines of the day. And his stories hold up, and they're just great slam-bang adventures tales. And in this one, most of the stories feature Francis Xavier Gordon, known in most of Asia as Borak, which means the Swift. And he's an American adventurer who was active in Afghanistan and its surrounding countries in the early years of the 20th century. The latest story in terms of internal chronology is set during World War I, and the others are implicitly pre-war. Though there no dates are clearly given, the novella Three-Bladed Doom mentions a Tsar ruling in Russia. So most of the stories are pre-World War I. One of them is set during the war. 4 of the 7 Borak stories were published during Howard's lifetime, or shortly after his death. All are more fun than a barrel full of thirsty camels. These are just great adventure stories. Borak and the band he leads are always getting involved in the political machinations of the area. Now, Borak is no fan of the British Empire, but he figures it's a better choice than any of the various would-be tyrants who want to take over that part of the world. Thus, each story often has him in disguise, or trying to convince villains that he wants to join them, as he gathers information or works to get the bad guys to turn against one another. When violence happens, and it wouldn't be a Robert E. Howard story if violence didn't frequently happen, we're treated to truly exciting scenes ranging from full-scale battles to single sword duels. Howard was a master at describing violent action and drawing us into that action. Sons of the Hawk, a short story originally published as Country of the Knife in 1936, is a great example of this. It ends with Borak and a handful of men, exhausted and low on ammunition, fighting a desperate last stand against a larger force. It's exciting and intense, edge-of-your-seat prose. Now, after the Borak stories, we get 3 Kirby O'Donnell tales, 2 of which were published in the pulps in the 1930s, and 1 that didn't see print until the 1970s. Kirby is a straightforward treasure hunter, though the stories here show that he'll give up the treasure he's seeking if it's the right thing to do. The story not published in Howard's lifetime, The Trail of the Bloodstained God, is my favorite of the 3, and one of my favorite in this volume. It's a slam-bang, action-packed treasure hunt in which O'Donnell is forced to team up with men he knows will eventually double-cross him. Now, this is actually one of a number of Howard stories that were rewritten by L. Sprague de Camp into Conan's tales, and is, in my opinion, the only time this was successful, as there's a logical place to insert a supernatural element. Usually the supernatural stuff needed to help make it a Howard story, a Conan story, is awkwardly shoved into the de Camp rewrites. The original version, though, is still better. The last story features Steve Carney, another treasure-seeking adventurer whose partner is a Muslim warrior named Yar Ali. Carney makes his one and only appearance here in a story, also not sold during Howard's lifetime. Carney and Yar Ali are searching out a lost city rumored to contain a priceless jewel. It's another fun treasure hunt tale, and the Carney-Yar Ali dynamic is a strong one. I often wonder why Howard's stories didn't sell in his lifetime. All of them are good, and a number of them are among the best work of this best pulp writer ever. This volume also includes a shorter, but not quite as good version of the novella Three-Bladed Doom, and a fragment of an unfinished Kirby O'Donnell tale. There's also a nifty essay by David Hardy about real-life gunfighters of the Wild East that might have been an inspiration for Howard's protagonist. Though there is a portion of my brain where Borak, O'Donnell, and Carney don't need real-life inspirations, because they really lived, fought, and found unlikely victories in real life. Many of Howard's characters have moved into that portion of me that also thinks of Tarzan and Sherlock Holmes and Captain Nemo and Long John Silver as real as well. They're part of my personal, tailor-made Wold Newton universe, and I never get tired of revisiting their stories. Next book is Mudd's Angels, adapted by J.A. Lawrence. It says adapted because 2 of the 3 stories in here are adaptations of the 2 episodes of the original Star Trek series that featured con artist Harry Mudd. Now remember that James Blish, back in the day, was hired to write the prose adaptations of the original Star Trek episodes. These books, with 5 or 6 episode adaptations per volumes, they meant a lot to me growing up. I still remember being disappointed when I learned that Blish disliked the series and considered the adaptations hack work that he did because the pay was nice. Apparently, starting with about Star Trek VI, he started letting his wife, J.A. Lawrence, handle the bulk of the Star Trek work. And this workload shifted even more when his health began to go. Lawrence, though, didn't receive an author credit until Star Trek XII, the last in the series. And oh well, I still love this series. I still love the Blish adaptations of the episodes, even if Blish was a little snobbish about it. Now, there were 2 episodes, the 2 featuring Harry Mudd, that were not adapted for those books. So in 1978, this is 3 years after Blish's death, J.A. Lawrence wrote this book. And it starts with adaptations of the 2 Mudd episodes, Mudd's Women and I, Mudd. Both are faithful adaptations of the original episodes, though the prose version of I, Mudd doesn't quite capture the absurdist slapstick humor that makes the TV episode so much fun. The largest portion of the book is a new Mudd-centric adventure. It starts with a sudden galaxy-wide shortage of dilithium crystals, then spirals into an adventure that involves a chase through the energy barrier that surrounds the galaxy, teleportation to another galaxy entirely, Chekhov hallucinating that he's the 14th century Mongol ruler Tamerlane, some short-term time travel that briefly convinces Starfleet Command that Kirk and Spock have gone nuts, and Harry being put on trial by androids. There's also a scene in which Kirk has to decide whether the android population of the planet can be considered sentient beings, with arguments similar to those that would be made 11 years later in the TNG episode The Measure of the Man, when Data was put on trial to decide whether he had full rights as a sentient being. So the story is fun. This new Mudd story is fun. It effectively mixing together action and humor. I'm not sure the plot line of the new Mudd adventure stands up to logical scrutiny, but it's an entertaining enough romp to make up for this. And it's always good to go back and revisit some old Star Trek stuff. The new Star Trek television series have been bad, with Starfleet Academy being truly horrible, to a nauseating degree. And I see people sometimes saying that Star Trek is dead, but it's not, because the old stuff is still there. We can still find Kirk and Spock acting in character in the original episodes, in the movies, 4 out of 6 of which were actually good, and in many, many novels and comic book appearances in which those characters and the themes of the original series are treated with respect. So good science fiction and optimism and exploration is still out there. You just gotta revisit stuff that is always worth revisiting. And next, we revisit with Eliot Ness. Bulletproof by Max Allan Collins is the third of the 4 Eliot Ness mysteries that he wrote that are set during the 1930s. This is after Ness's untouchable days, when he worked as safety director in Cleveland, running both the police and the fire departments. Collins's novels were fictionalized versions of cases that Ness actually worked. In this case, he looked into labor trouble. And there's a couple of smart racketeers that are entrenched in important union positions, using this to extort money out of local business owners. Now, Ness's problem is getting enough victims to testify, since doing so could be dangerous to their health. In the meantime, Ness recruits an old friend who's involved in the unions to help gather evidence. The friend's an old union hand, but he recognizes that what the racketeers are doing isn't helping the working class at all. So eventually the situation escalates from vandalism and extortion to murder. And there's an attempt to hit Ness as well. But the top cop comes up with a clever plan to gather supposedly lost ballistic evidence, and soon finds himself stalking a killer through a warehouse filled with plate glass. It's yet another great entry in a great series. Collins is a great storyteller. He did magnificent historical research, so even though these are fictionalized, they're very solidly set in what was really happening in Cleveland at the time. The story progresses logically. Ness is presented as a strong and smart protagonist, and the characterizations of both the good guys and the bad guys are excellent. I'm looking forward to reading the last one in the series. The Napoleons of Eridanus by Pierre Barbet. And this is translated from the French. The main character, Bernard, is a captain in Napoleon's army. In 1814, retreating from Moscow with a ragtag band of other stragglers, running out of food as they ride their starving horses through the endless winter terrain. He has no idea that his men and himself will soon be kidnapped and taken to another solar system. See, the non-human fortrons have been at peace for thousands of years, but they're now being attacked by the aggressive Kivyars. Since the fortrons have no idea how to fight a war, they're recruiting mercenaries from Earth to lead their robot troops. It takes one warlike race to fight another, apparently. There's only 8 human soldiers, which means there isn't enough to fill out all the vital command positions in the army, which is made up entirely of robots. But the judicious use of cloning technology takes care of that problem. Now, what follows is a fun, imaginative space opera. It was originally written in French, and the novel's English, the English translation does have some stiff prose in a few places. It's not perfect. But for the most part, the story moves along rapidly and entertainingly. I especially enjoy a sequence in which Bernard is leading a robot army through a jungle for a surprise attack, only to discover that the flora and fauna on this particular planet is very deadly in of itself. And so he has to do some fighting and some maneuvering and some outthinking the unusual enemies before he even encounters his actual enemy. Bernard is also ambitious. He discovers it's possible to adapt Napoleonic war tactics to space combat, win some battles, and begin plotting to eventually declare himself emperor. Interstellar war and political intrigue mixed together very nicely. So, The Napoleons of Eridanus, once again, a good book, one I can recommend. Cool cover there, too, isn't it? Snow Treasure by Marie McSwingan, originally published in 1942. This book was actually mentioned in a comment on a previous video with someone who had read it through the Scholastic Reading Program when he was a kid, and was wondering if it would turn out to be good if he read it as an adult. And Glenn, I am here to tell you that you would enjoy this if you reread it as an adult. As I said, it was written in 1942, but it's set in 1940, just as the Germans are invading Norway. There's a fortune in gold belonging to the Norwegian government that has been transferred to the northern village of Ryswick near the Arctic Circle. But it's only temporarily safe there. It has to be taken out of the country, somehow loaded aboard a hidden ship under the noses of the occupying Germans, and then then sneaked out into the open sea and eventually to get to the United States. There was a story in real life at the time that the gold was smuggled past Germans by children, and there's no historical truth to this tale apparently, but the author takes the idea and runs with it. The gold is taken past the Germans to the hidden ship by kids a few bricks at a time. It's hidden aboard their sleds, with kids then zipping by the unsuspecting sentries who pay little attention to children playing in the snow. Now, the book is written for kids. It's written for probably middle school children. And it's roughly at the level of a Hardy Boys novel in terms of characterizations and complexity. The prose is straightforward and entertaining, with the author doing a remarkable job of generating tension and a real sense of danger as the story progresses, all without being able to rely on violent action scenes. Our point of view character is the 12-year-old Peter, who's determined to help get the job done. What I like about it is that Peter's not a kid superhero. He's scared and uncertain, especially when it appears that a German has stumbled upon their plan, or when a German officer is inches away from literally stubbing his toe on 2 bars of gold that had been hastily hidden in a snowbank. At one point, to keep the gold from being found, Peter learns the consequences of hitting a German officer with a snowball. There's no attempt to hide or minimize the danger. It's clear that the Nazis will kill even children if they're defied. Peter's combination of courage and fear, with his courage always inching ahead of the fear, makes him a memorable and identifiable protagonist. So, Glenn, thank you for the recommendation. I enjoyed reading this a lot. Now, what am I reading now? I'm finishing up the 8-book Davy Crockett series, with the last one in that series, Cannibal Country. I am via my Serial app, which I've been using to read several different media tie-in series. I'm currently on the last of the novelizations of Planet of the Apes television episodes. So I'm almost done with that one. And I'm still also reading The Count of Monte Cristo. As I mentioned on a previous video, I started reading this when I was at a very boring banquet on my phone. And I'm reading it kind of as a serial rather than straight through, because I just don't, it's a long book. It's a magnificent book. It's been far too long since I've read it. But it's also a very long book, and I don't want to be kept away from reading other stuff for a long time, so I'm kind of reading it as a serial as well, a few chapters at a time. And that is just about it for now. Please remember to like these videos. I continue to be in the backwater of BookTube, where I only get a couple of dozen hits per video, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't care if the channel ever grows, as long as those of you who are listening to this on a regular basis continue to like, just so that I know you're still out there. And if you have some comments, if you've read anything I've recommended, if you have books you'd like for me to read, just leave a comment on that. And once again, thank you all for listening.